Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trident Talks. I'm Josh Keeley, the recruitment director here at Trident, and I'm very pleased to say we are joined today with Oliver Fairbank, head of analysis at Orpheus. Oliver, welcome.
Hi, cheers for having me on, Josh. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
Good. Ollie, those that don't know you, not many, there's only a few that don't know you. If you could just give a quick, I suppose, brief summary of who you are, how you got into threat intel, the kind of route you come through to get to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the head of analysis at Orpheus. We're a specialist cyber threat intelligence consultancy. Been here for about 3 years now. Kind of prior to that, I've worked in various other consultancies in private sector, cyber threat intelligence. I guess how I got into CTI in the first place, I did a postgraduate degree in intelligence and international security. I was working for a kind of small boutique intelligence consultancy. This is going back quite a few years now, kind of before cyber threat intelligence was established as it is now. So I kind of had a bit of exposure to it from the space of kind of conventional security intelligence analysis. And kind of gradually started picking things up and kind of went from there.
Okay, awesome. So now, as you said, head of analysis at Orpheus. Do you run a team? If so, how big? What do Orpheus do? For those that don't know, I'm just thinking of, I'm an aspiring threat intel analyst. Who are you guys and what kind of services do you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you say, manage the team of analysts. We offer kind of a variety of bespoke and subscription services. So, for example, we do a lot of work with, it's a bit of a mouthful, but regulator-mandated intelligence-led security testing schemes. So this is things like CBEST, TBEST, GBEST, TIBER, basically where we as the specialist accredited threat intelligence provider, we are tasked with basically finding out what the threats are to big organizations that are kind of operating in those critical national infrastructure sectors. So whether it's big banks, big telecoms firms, government departments, and then we work with penetration testing partners and they conduct the actual testing on those pieces. That's just one example at the kind of bespoke end of the project scale. We do all sorts of bits and pieces using that kind of collection infrastructure that we've developed over a number of years, whether it's investigations, kind of the IP exposure reports, threat assessments, cyber due diligence. We kind of use that same approach of collecting large volumes of data and information, using our technology, using our skilled analyst team to process it, make sense of it. We use that to support our subscription services. So we provide a threat intelligence subscription, and we're really kind of leading with our cyber risk rating service at the moment. So it's kind of an increasingly emerging domain within cybersecurity. The idea of being able to effectively assess third-party risk or supply chain cyber risk. And the idea is that, again, you can very quickly, you basically enter a couple of points of metadata at a particular company. And we've built at Orpheus a proprietary tool that identifies threats and vulnerabilities that pertain to that company so that you can better manage that supply chain risk, or you as that third-party company can receive that kind of actionable intelligence and understand your threats and reduce the level of vulnerability that you face to overall reduce your cyber risk.
And I know one of the things that you guys are big on and advocates on and you offer as a service is obviously the cyber risk ratings, right? It's a massive part of what you guys do. I don't know much about cyber risk rating, so it'd be awesome for me personally just to find out more about it. But also for the listeners and viewers, what is cyber risk ratings? Does it include, or does it, I suppose, solve the so what question that so many people bring up when they're faced with threat intelligence reports? If you could just dive a little bit deeper, and that'd be great.
Yeah, I guess maybe starting with the kind of strategic impetus around this service. So one of the things we're seeing looking at the threat landscape is the increasing number of supply chain compromises. So as say institutions themselves, their security perimeter or their controls are becoming more and more sophisticated, it's harder for attackers to target them directly. However, what they have found a lot of success in is targeting, say, that banks, third-party organizations who might be smaller and kind of less mature control environments. less resources to spend on cybersecurity. So it's more important than ever now for those large organizations to understand how cyber secure effectively their partner organizations are as well. So that's kind of what's driven that piece. We think of, or I guess the easiest way to categorize cyber risk rating is thinking about it as your credit rating or whatever you have. You typically have a score of 0 to 999, based upon, I don't know how effectively trustworthy. I'm sure yours is stellar, Josh, no doubt.
Yeah, 999.
There you go, always. But the idea is that you can chuck in a couple of data points, and very quickly we can conduct that kind of passive reconnaissance on that third-party organisation. You really quickly get quite a detailed picture on where that company might be vulnerable, for example. And I think the crucial thing there is matching up that understanding of their vulnerabilities with the understanding of the threat. So, for example, you can say, we found this vulnerability on your public-facing network. We know this particular adversary group, it could be a group using ransomware, is targeting this vulnerability at the moment. And it's kind of marrying those together to speak to that point about actionable intelligence, because that's so what, how is what we're providing actionable is always kind of at the core of what we're trying to do at Orpheus, and should be, I think, inherent to any kind of threat intelligence program.
No, yeah, absolutely. Do you think, so that's, you're talking about like the strategic level and also 3 layers of threat intel. Do you work with those supply chain companies as well, or the companies that are part of a bigger company's supply chain, if that makes sense? So like the bank's got lots of supply chain. Do you work with those as well to improve cyber resiliency, or do you mainly focus on your customer, your priority, your main customer there, and just make sure that they're aware of their supply chain's risk? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a kind of hub and spoke approach. So you predominantly deal with that large organization in the middle, because they're the one, with the slightly more mature cybersecurity posture. They're the one that's looking to drive down the level of risk associated with those individual suppliers. And also, it's kind of the way of the world. When you're a big company, you're offering potentially big lucrative contracts to some of those smaller providers. You're obviously more in a position to command, say, that a supplier needs to reach a certain level of cybersecurity, a certain number even on that kind of cyber risk rating dial, so that they can provide services into that organization. We do also work with a lot of the smaller companies. Again, we've kind of designed the cyber risk rating product to be accessible, essentially, so that and kind of tiered, so that there is an offering for those kind of SMEs who, again, aren't going to have anywhere near the level of internal resource or potentially the budget to invest in a kind of dedicated solution.
Yeah, we're seeing that also within recruitment. When we are signing terms of business or T's and C's, should we say, and we're the supply chain, right, with a big organization, we're seeing more so now than ever. There are terms and clauses in there where it says we'll only sign terms with a recruitment partner who are Cyber Essentials Plus or who have 27001. So we're seeing that more than ever now. We have to present certifications and things. And
I think, and we'd say that rather than a kind of, obviously Cyber Essentials Plus and those other accreditation certification schemes are good and a step in the right direction. I think, that kind of, we'd always advocate an intelligence-led approach rather than a kind of audit-based or compliance-based approach, so that you get that kind of live dynamic update of what vulnerabilities organizations might have on their perimeter. I think going back to, I guess, another strategic driver for the cyber risk piece, just going back to what you said, and you've probably seen this change in the recruitment industry, is just the extent to which, and sorry, this is another factor that's kind of driven the supply chain cyber risk or third-party cyber risk piece, is the fact that companies are so much more interconnected at this stage. So many more companies rely on others for outsourced services. So companies that you work with, you're responsible for effectively storing business critical, really sensitive data. So it's more important than ever that they kind of understand the extent to which you may be exposed, or other third parties kind of may be vulnerable to cyber attack if they are holding their data. Yeah,
completely. So that brings me on to, I suppose, my final point want to talk to you and ask your advice on. Really, you're at the forefront of the industry, head of analysis at Orpheus. What's the future of threat intel look like? Obviously, we've seen a massive change from traditional intelligence into more cyber-led threat intel. We've seen these big fusion teams come together, and everyone's got experience with human, SOCMIN, etc., academic backgrounds, military backgrounds. And there's always a big argument for having a real diverse workforce for different sort of mindsets and bias and things like that. What do you see the future of CTI? Is it automated? Is it people-led? Is it what do you think from what you're seeing?
I think looking at maybe kind of starting off with how CTI has become over the past 10 years or so, it's kind of moved from a bit of maybe a kind of fringe pursuit or maybe a nice to have to something that is increasingly integral to, to cybersecurity and basically how firms secure themselves more broadly. I think that intelligence-led approach is becoming increasingly embedded, and I think maybe in another 10 years' time, we won't think necessarily of cyber threat intelligence as a kind of distinct discipline. It will just become embedded in day-to-day security because those processes will become so integrated, and because it will be also, as you mentioned, kind of increasingly integrated with conventional security efforts. So I think we'll see a kind of breakdown in the distinction that still persists to this day of having a security department on one side and having a information security or cyber security kind of wing or department, just because we're seeing that kind of line of demarcation kind of dwindle or become less relevant, as obviously those two areas are more and more kind of integrated and overlap more and more.
Yeah, some very, very good points. Oliver, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. Appreciate your time, and my phone's ringing. So there's clearly time to go.
Busy man.
We can edit. We're good at editing. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Cheers, Josh. Pleasure.
Bye. Bye.